Hello Year 10. I'm just going to start this lesson with a quick reminder. Next week there's going to be an end of unit assessment, but this assessment is going to be open book, so you don't need to revise or learn the material, but you will need to apply the material. So part of this week's work will involve using our revision guide, which you can see an image of just on the right hand side of the screen, and obviously the notes in your exercise book. And if you can go through the key topic 1 list and make sure you can understand all those topics, such as the Buffalo, the Oregon Trail, the Donner Party, the Mormons, the Gold Rush, the Fort Laramie Treaty, and you know where they are in the revision guide and you understand them, that'll put you in a good place for the assessment next week. So the assessment is going to focus on key topic 1 and key topic 2. We're not going to assess key topic 3 that we've looked at in lockdown. So everybody will have completed key topic 1 and key topic 2 before we broke up for the Christmas holidays. So everybody should have these notes. So that's just a reminder that next week it's your open book end of unit assessment. Okay, just on to today's lesson, which is going to be preparation for the assessment next week. Okay, if you can put a heading in your book that very simply says question technique, narrative question, because we're going to remind ourselves of what success looks like in this particular question type. So pause the video lesson and get that title into your book. So this is the question we're looking at. It's write a narrative account analysing the main developments in US government policy towards the Plains Indians in the period 1876 to 1890. You may use the following in your answer: the Battle of Little Bighorn, Wounded Knee Massacre of 1890. So if you can just copy that question into your book, obviously you will need to pause the video. But remember, the historical narrative is basically a detailed historical story about what the US government did, but make sure you link point to the story and that you use some analytical connectives. So again, just pause this slide and get that title. So remember the structure for the historical narrative. You basically need a start, a middle, and an end. And you've got to think about what the government did and the consequences for Plains Indians. So if you look at my help guide here, the start, the first main development in US policy towards the Plains Indians in the period 1876 to 1890 came as a result of the Battle of Little Bighorn. And you can look back in your notes in your book, or you can look at my copy on screen here. That information you'll find at number 1. So you have to explain how, after the Battle of Little Bighorn, the US government forced the Plains Indians onto ever smaller reservations. They weren't allowed to hunt buffalo, and that obviously had political, economic, religious consequences for the Plains Indians. So once you've explored the impact of reservation policy after the Battle of Little Bighorn, you can move on to the middle of the story, because following this was the Dawes Act of 1887. And again, you can see that information at number 2 highlighted in yellow. That's where you've got to explain what the Dawes Act was, what it intended to do, and what consequences it had for making the lives of our Plains Indians even worse. And then number 3, the final development, is obviously because of the Gold Stance movement and the US government's response to that. And again, you can see that in the final table of notes, number 3, which is in your books, or you've got a copy on screen. So what you need to do, using my starter sentences, using the information located at 1 for the start, 2 for the middle, 3 for the end, put together our narrative of the US policy towards the Plains Indians 1876 to 1890. On the next slide, I'll just go through the connectives that you need to include to make sure you hit the best marks. So remember, we need connectives that link points together. That's explaining the cause and effect. So you need statements like, as a result of this, therefore this led to, following this was, the next step was, furthermore. So those should be in each of your paragraphs linking the developments. And at the end of this analytical narrative, the reader should be able to understand what the US government did as a result of the Battle of Little Bighorn, i.e. reservations, and how bad they were for Plains Indians. The reader should then understand what the government did with the Dawes Act and how bad that was for Plains Indians. And then finally, the reader should understand the harsh action the US government took as a result of the Go Stance movement. And that will create a really strong analytical narrative, and that'll be a reminder of the structure you need for this question for next week. So today's task is just to complete this narrative question. Thank you.